She said, "If I want to stay over at a guy friend's house after a party, that's my choice. Trust me or don't." I chose don't. When she finally realized I was gone, she left a trail of voice notes begging, screaming, then whispering, "Please come home." Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The cracks didn't start with a bang. They started with silence. The quiet, preoccupied silence of someone typing on their phone. A small, secretive smile playing on their lips before they noticed you looking and had vanished. That's how it was with Qley in those last few weeks. We'd be on the couch, my arm around her, some movie playing, and I'd feel the subtle vibration of her phone against my side. She'd shift, ever so slightly, to angle the screen away. I told myself I was imagining things. I was the paranoid boyfriend, the cliché. We'd been together for 2 years. We talked about getting a dog, about maybe looking at places together next spring. I loved her. Trust was the foundation, and I was determined to be a modern man, not some possessive cave dweller. But the geography of our relationship was changing. Her new friend group, spearheaded by a guy named Jake from her spin class, was becoming her default. I was invited, but always with a qualifier. It was a Tuesday evening, and she was chopping vegetables while I scrolled through rental listings, dreaming aloud about balconies and natural light. She wasn't really listening. "So," she said, the thunk of the knife punctuating her words. "Jake's having a thing Saturday. A rooftop party at his building. Should be pretty epic." "Sounds fun," I said, looking up. "What's the vibe?" "Mostly his work friends from the tech scene. You know, startup types." She shrugged, not meeting my eye. "You're welcome to come, obviously. But honestly, babe, you might find it kind of boring. It's not really your crowd." A gentle dismissal. I felt it. I can hold my own. "I'm not totally socially inept," I said, trying to keep my voice light. I know. It's just, it'll probably go super late. And his place is right there in the same building. So if I end up crashing there, don't freak out, okay? It's just practical." The thunk stopped. The air in our small kitchen went still. This wasn't a casual suggestion. It was a trial balloon. I set my phone down. "At Jake's." I kept my voice even, calm. "Sure, I get the convenience. Uber prices are insane at 2 a.m. But you'd be sleeping on his couch, right? It's just, we've never really discussed sleepovers at other guys' places. It's a new one." She finally looked at me, her expression a mix of defensiveness and impatience. "Why does it matter? It's just a couch. God, it's not like anything would happen. Do you not trust me?" And there it was. The nuclear option. The question designed to shut down any further discussion by making me the villain, the insecure, controlling boyfriend. "It's not about trust, Qley," I said, choosing my words with care. "It's about respect. Respect for our relationship, for what we have. Spending the night at another guy's apartment, even platonically, is a boundary for me. It makes me uncomfortable." She waved the knife, a dismissive little gesture. "Well, it shouldn't. Jake's a friend. A good friend. It's 2023. Men and women can be friends without it being weird. I agree they can. But friends don't typically have sleepovers when one of them is in a committed relationship. It's about the appearance, the principle of it." "The principle," she repeated, as if the word was silly. She went back to chopping, harder now. "Fine. Whatever. I just wanted to give you a heads up." The conversation died there, buried under the sound of sizzling onions and unspoken tension. I let it go. I told myself I was being reasonable, that she'd see my point, that she'd text me when the party was over and get a ride home. I was the understanding boyfriend. I trusted her, but the knot in my stomach didn't loosen. Saturday arrived, heavy and overcast. Qley was buzzing with a nervous energy, trying on 3 different outfits, asking my opinion but not really hearing it. The party was a looming event, a dividing line. That evening, as she was doing her makeup at the bathroom mirror, I leaned against the doorframe. The unease had solidified into a cold, hard stone in my gut. I had to try one more time, to state my case clearly, without accusation. "Hey," I said, my voice soft. "About tonight." She met my eyes in the mirror, her expression carefully neutral. "Yeah, it would make me more comfortable, a lot more comfortable, if you just got an Uber home. However late it is. I'll pay for it. Seriously, or I can come get you. I don't mind. Anytime. Just text me." She put her mascara down slowly, turned around, and crossed her arms. The carefully constructed neutrality shattered, replaced by something colder. So you're saying you don't believe I can be in a house with a man and not cheat on you? That's what this is about. You think I'm going to fuck Jake on his couch? The crudeness of it was a slap. No, I said, my own voice hardening just a fraction. It's not about cheating. It's about respect for our relationship. It's a boundary for me. A simple one. Don't spend the night at another man's apartment. Is that really so unreasonable? She stared at me, and in her eyes, I didn't see love or compromise or even frustration. I saw contempt. She saw my boundary as a weakness, my request as a shackle. Well, she said, her voice flat and final, each word a nail. If I want to stay over at a guy friend's house after a party, that's my choice. Trust me or don't. She held my gaze, challenging me. This was her line in the sand. She was framing my entire devotion, our 2 years, as a binary test. An ultimatum wrapped in the language of empowerment. The cold stone in my gut melted, replaced by a sudden, shocking clarity. The fog of doubt, the constant self-questioning, lifted. I saw the path forward with perfect, sterile vision. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I didn't list all the ways I'd shown my trust. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. A selfish, dismissive stranger who valued her own defiant choice over my peace of mind, over the basic integrity of what we shared. I nodded slowly, not in agreement, but in understanding. A profound, life-altering understanding. Okay, I said, my voice eerily calm, even to my own ears. I understand. I turned and walked out of the bathroom. I heard her make a small, exasperated sound behind me, assuming she'd won, that I was capitulating to another night of silent resentment. She had no idea. I went to the living room, sat on the couch she'd chosen, and looked at the framed photo of us on a hiking trip, both of us smiling, sunburnt, and happy. The man in that photo was already gone. He'd been chipped away, piece by secretive phone smiles and dismissive gestures, and now, this final, cruel choice. Trust me or don't. I had made my decision. The clarity that followed her ultimatum was like stepping into a cold, still room after a raging storm. All the noise, the anxiety, the doubt, the desperate need to make her understand, just ceased. I felt a profound, almost unsettling calm. I went to bed before she left for the party. I heard the click of her heels, the scent of her perfume lingering in the hallway, the final click of the apartment door. I didn't get up. I lay there in the dark, not planning my next move, because it was already planned. I'd begun it the day after our first conversation about Jake, a quiet voice in my head telling me to prepare for an outcome I didn't want to believe was possible. I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. When I woke at dawn, the apartment was silent. Her side of the bed was untouched. I didn't check my phone. I showered, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, and went to the back of my closet. From behind a stack of sweaters, I pulled out a duffel bag I'd packed incrementally over the last 10 days. A few changes of clothes, my passport and important documents, my grandfather's watch, the book I was reading. Nothing of ours. Nothing that was us. In the living room, I took one last look. At the stupid, overpriced velvet pillow she had to have. At the coffee table book about architecture we'd bought together on a weekend trip. It all looked like a stage set for a life that was no longer mine. On the kitchen table, I placed the single key to my apartment, leased in my name before I'd ever met her, and a simple bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite. I took a notepad from the drawer and wrote just 4 words. Not an explanation, not a plea, not an accusation. A simple statement of fact, the answer to the test she'd given me. I've chosen don't. Take care. Mark. I didn't look back. I closed the door, and in that act, I closed the book on us. My friend Ben, who'd been watching my slow-motion heartbreak for weeks, didn't ask questions when I showed up at his door with a duffel bag at 7 a.m. He just clapped me on the shoulder, pointed to the made-up sofa, and said, "Coffee's on. Stay as long as you need." The first thing I did on his couch was open my phone. I didn't scroll. I went straight to my contacts, tapped her name, and hit block. I did the same for her number. Then I opened our shared notes app, our shared grocery list, our photo cloud. I removed her one digital thread at a time, severing the connections with surgical precision. I left one channel open, the messaging app we used most frequently. I didn't block her there. I simply turned off all notifications and archived the chat. I needed a record, not for revenge, but for my own sanity. A receipt. Then, I put my phone face down. "You okay, man?" Ben asked, handing me a mug. "I will be," I said, and I meant it. The first voice note came through at 11:37 a.m. I saw the preview icon on the app later that afternoon when I was idly checking a work email. I waited until I was alone in Ben's guest bathroom that night, the fan humming, to listen. I pressed play, my face blank in the mirror. Her voice was thick with sleep and annoyance. "Really? This is so immature. You're actually going to throw away 2 years because you're insecure?" I stayed on Jake's couch, for God's sake. It was lumpy and his roommate was snoring. "This is a pathetic overreaction. Call me. We need to talk like adults." There was no guilt. "No, I'm sorry I worried you." Just contempt for my feelings, framed as maturity. I deleted it. The sound of her voice sparked nothing in me. Not anger, not sadness. It was data. Point 1 on the graph of her unraveling. Denial and dismissal. Days passed. I called my landlord, explained the situation, and paid a fee to formally remove her from the lease, a clause I'd wisely insisted on. I forwarded her mail. I went to work, buried myself in a project I'd been neglecting, and found a strange solace in the code, its logic a bomb after her emotional chaos. I started running with Ben in the mornings. The physical exhaustion felt like purification. A week after I left, I was at Ben's kitchen island, helping him cook dinner, when he let out a low whistle. "Oh wow, check this out." He turned his laptop toward me. It was a social media post from a mutual acquaintance we barely knew. A blurry, neon-lit club photo. In the center, with his arm slung possessively around the waist of a laughing blonde woman, was Jake. The caption read, "Celebrating the new deal with my lucky charm. At Jake Miller at Tasha Shaw." I felt Ben's eyes on me, looking for a reaction. I just nodded slowly. "Huh. The guy she chose her principal over," Ben said, shaking his head. "Classy." I didn't feel vindicated. I felt a distant, hollow pity. She'd torched our relationship for a choice that, to the other party, meant absolutely nothing. She was a convenient couch surfer, a temporary ego boost. She'd been discarded by the very freedom she'd prized. The second voice note arrived that night. It was longer. Her tone had shifted. Okay, Mark. You've made your point. I'm sorry, okay? I shouldn't have framed it like that. But you just left. You didn't even fight for me. How is that fair? Jake and I are just friends. You're being so paranoid. Please, just call me back. We can fix this. Just please." The condescension was gone, replaced by a shaky panic. She was sorry for the framing, not the action. Sorry for my reaction, not her choice. And the classic rewrite of history. You didn't fight for me. She'd given me no room to fight. She'd issued an ultimatum and was shocked when I accepted it. I deleted it. Stage 2, bargaining and blame shifting. The silence from my end was a vacuum, and nature, like her psyche, abhors a vacuum. The third voice note came 3 days later. I was packing a small suitcase. I'd found a sublet, a clean, minimalist studio with a view of the river. A fresh start. I played the message as I folded a shirt. It was raw. I could hear her crying, the sound wet and ugly, stripped of any performance. "You were right. Okay, you were right. He's an asshole. It was all a mistake. I miss you so much. The apartment is so quiet. I keep waiting to hear your keys in the door. I can't sleep in our bed. It smells like you. Please come home. I'll do anything. I'll never talk to him again. I'll give you all my passwords. Just please." This was the real pain, the consequence arriving like a delayed freight train. She wasn't sorry for disrespecting me. She was sorry because her gamble had failed spectacularly. Jake was gone, and the stability I represented, the man who would have paid for her Uber, who would have waited up, was gone, too. She wasn't pleading for me. She was pleading for the life raft she'd casually kicked away. A dull, heavy pity settled in my chest. I deleted the message. Stage 3, desperate negotiation. The final voice note arrived 2 weeks after that, in the dead of night. I was in my new studio, assembling a bookshelf, the city lights twinkling outside my bare window. I'd just finished sanding a rough edge on the wood, the action meditative and satisfying. I saw the notification, a tiny red dot on the app, one now never opened. I almost didn't listen. But some part of me needed the closure, Needed to hear the full arc of the tragedy she'd authored. I pressed play. There was no sound at first. Then, the faint rustle of fabric. A shaky, indrawn breath. Her voice, when it came, was a ghost of itself. A hollow, broken whisper, stripped of all pride, all anger, all artifice. It was the sound of absolute emptiness. Please come home. Please. A long, static-filled pause. I don't know who I am without you here. I'm so sorry. I'm so lost. Please. The whisper hung in the air of my new, quiet apartment. It was the culmination of every choice she'd made, every dismissive word, every secretive smile at her phone. It was the sound of karma, not as dramatic punishment, but as the inevitable, aching void left when you treat love as an option and respect as a weakness. I felt nothing. Not triumph. Not sadness. Not even that distant pity. It was like hearing a weather report from a country I'd never visit. I didn't delete it immediately. I placed my phone on the newly assembled shelf, walked to the window, and looked out at the river, a dark ribbon studded with reflected lights. I took a deep, clean breath of the air in my own space, untainted by perfume or resentment. Then I went back, picked up my phone, and for the final time, pressed delete. 6 months is a lifetime when you're building it brick by brick in silence. My studio by the river became a home. The bookshelf I'd assembled that night now held a growing collection. The view, once just a novelty, became a part of my daily meditation, the constant, steady flow of the water a reminder that things move on. I'd gotten the promotion at work, the one I'd been too distracted to properly chase. I'd reconnected with old friends, the ones Qley had subtly nudged me away from, calling them your boring college buddies. We played poker on Tuesdays. It was mundane and perfect. Ben called it my post-traumatic glow-up. I just called it peace. I heard about Qley in fragments, from the dwindling network of mutuals. She'd left the apartment, couldn't afford it alone. Moved in with a cousin. Jake, unsurprisingly, had officially and publicly coupled up with the blonde, Tasha. Qley's social media, which I never checked but Ben occasionally reported on, had gone from defiant, living my best life, posts to a long, then permanent, silence. I never thought about reaching out. She had become a lesson learned, a closed chapter. The memory of her whispering voice notes sometimes surfaced, not as a wound, but as a marker, the moment I knew my silence had been heard. The encounter, when it happened, was not an accident. It was a Sunday morning at The Grind, the coffee shop we'd frequented near our old place. I still went sometimes. They roasted the best beans in the city. I was waiting for my order, reading a newsletter on my phone, wearing the quiet confidence of a man utterly comfortable in his own skin. I'd just come from a run. I looked like what I was, healthy, rested, and alone by choice. Mark, the voice was tentative, thinner. I knew it instantly, but the sound triggered no pulse spike, no cold dread. Just a mild, distant recognition, like hearing a song you'd once overplayed. I looked up. Qley stood by the condiment station. She was trying to look put together, a nice coat, makeup applied with care, but it seemed painted on a fragile surface. Her eyes held a hectic energy, a desperate hope mixed with deep, tired shadows. She looked smaller. The defiant woman who'd issued an ultimatum in a bathroom doorway had vanished. "Hi, Qley," I said. My voice was polite, neutral. The tone you'd use with a coworker you barely know. "How are you? Not what are you doing here? Not wow, long time. Not you look." Just a simple, socially required inquiry, devoid of any real interest. She flinched, almost imperceptibly, at the placid normalcy of it. She'd likely rehearsed tearful reunions or heated arguments. She hadn't prepared for this. Okay, she lied, her eyes searching my face frantically for any crack, any hint of the old pain, the old love. She found nothing. A smooth wall of pleasant detachment. "You look really good." "Thank you," I said, as if she'd complimented my jacket. I glanced past her toward the counter where my name would be called. "Listen, Mark," she began, her words tumbling out in a rehearsed rush. "I know you got my messages. All of them. I need to know if there's any chance. To talk. To even just get coffee. Like this." She gestured weakly between us. "I've been in therapy. Seriously. I understand what I did now. It was about my own insecurity, my own issues. It was never about you. You were everything." I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence stretch, let her sit in the emptiness of her own words. My coffee was called. I collected it from the counter, took a slow sip, and turned back to her. She was still standing there, frozen, waiting for a verdict. "I'm glad you're working on yourself," I said. It was the most benign, generic thing I could say. It carried no warmth, no investment. Her composure began to fissure. "That's it. You're working on yourself? Mark, you just vanished. You didn't fight for us. You didn't even give me a real conversation. Was I that easy to leave? Was what we had that meaningless to you?" Her voice was rising, tinged with the anger of the second voice note, the one that had blamed me for not fighting. This was the crucible. This was where the old me would have broken, would have launched into a passionate defense, a relitigation of every hurt. The old me would have given her the emotional engagement she craved, even if it was negative. The man I was now simply looked at her, his head tilted slightly, as if observing a mildly puzzling specimen. "You gave me a choice," I said, my voice still calm, devoid of any emotional charge. "A very clear one. I made it. Once that choice was made, there was nothing left to fight for. The fight was over." She stared, her mouth slightly open. My logic was irrefutable, and it was ice cold. "So that's your grand statement?" she hissed, the hurt curdling into something uglier, truer. The facade of the therapy-talking, enlightened woman cracked, revealing the raw entitlement beneath. "After everything, I get the silent treatment, and then this politeness? You used to love me. You looked at me like I was the whole world." I took another sip of my coffee. It was excellent. I appreciated it fully in that moment. "Qley," I said, setting my cup down with a soft finality. My gaze was direct, but not harsh. It was simply factual. That person you're talking about, the one who loved you, who looked at you that way, he's gone. You dismissed him. You told him his feelings were an obstacle to your choices. I could see the words landing, each one a weight pulling her down. "And honestly," I continued, my tone shifting to one of pure, unadulterated realism, "building a new life without that constant negotiation, without the walking on eggshells, without the tests, it's peaceful. It's quiet. I don't think about you. I don't wish you ill. You're just a person I used to know." The color drained from her face. "I don't think about you." It was the ultimate defeat. Not hatred, not lingering love, but utter irrelevance. My peace was not in spite of her. It was completely unrelated to her. She had become a non-factor in the equation of my happiness. Her anger evaporated, leaving behind a devastating, hollow understanding. The fight went out of her shoulders. She wasn't looking at a heartbroken ex she could manipulate back. She was looking at a man who was genuinely, profoundly free. And her power, the power of my love for her, was now zero, extinct. I saw the exact moment she realized she was whispering into a void that had long since stopped echoing. "Take care of yourself, Qley," I said. It wasn't a wish. It was a closing statement. I picked up my coffee, gave her a small, polite nod that held the distance of continents, and turned. I walked out of the coffee shop, the bell jingling softly behind me. I didn't wonder if she was watching. I didn't wonder if she was crying. I didn't craft a better line in my head. I walked down the sun-dappled street toward the river, toward my home. I thought about the book I was going to finish reading on my balcony. I thought about the project I was excited to start at work tomorrow. I mentally added coffee to my grocery list. The memory of her face in that final moment, the shock, the devastation, the surrender, flickered in my mind and then dissolved, like a ripple smoothing out on the surface of that deep, steady river inside me. It held no weight. It carried no meaning. She had asked for a choice between trust and self-respect. I had chosen, and in that choice, I had found not just an exit, but a horizon. And I was already miles beyond it, walking in the quiet, sunlit calm of a life that was finally, completely my own. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.